Somewhere along the way, you were taught that writing should feel effortless, that if you were really a writer, the words would come easily. But that belief, it's a lie. And it's the reason so many writers freeze at the start, stall halfway through, or never finish at all. This idea that writing should be easy isn't just unhelpful, it's dangerous. And most writers don't even realize it's shaping the way they work. In this video, we're going to look at why that belief takes hold so easily, because if you've been stuck, doubting yourself, or losing momentum, this might be the real reason why. So this idea that writing should feel easy is one of the most damaging myths in the creative world. Sometimes it creeps into our minds even when we're not really even thinking about it. I know I've been working on a story or something, and suddenly it's getting really hard to pull out what comes next or to see it in my head as far as what's the next scene. It's like I'm trying to climb this huge mountain. I start thinking, oh, I've done this writing all this time. I should be able to do this better by now. I mean, this idea that writing should feel easier than that creeps in the middle while we're writing. Even if I asked you right now, should writing feel easy? You'd probably say, well, no. But I would challenge you to watch your thoughts the next time you're working on a story and just see what happens, because this belief creeps in when we least expect it. So let's say you've got the idea and you're motivated. So shouldn't the writing just work? But the blank page isn't just blank, it's loaded with expectations and fear and pressure to live up to the version in your head. And the more this story matters to you, the worse it gets. That pressure makes you cautious. So you hesitate, edit and tweak, and you try to find the right phrasing, and before you know it, you're stuck in a loop where nothing feels good enough to keep. This isn't just about perfectionism, unfortunately. It's about grief, because every sentence that doesn't match your vision feels like a little bit of a loss. We all have this image in our heads, or this vision in our heads, of what this story should be. And the instant we start writing down words, it's no longer that. Suddenly becomes this mess. So there's this grief between what we envisioned and what is on the page that we have to deal with, because it takes time to get what's on the page even close to what the vision is that we had for it. And if no one has told you that this is normal, then you're going to assume that you're just not good enough when that's not even close to true. So where does this lie come from anyway? Let's talk about that next. So we writers have been sold a fantasy that great writing just flows easily from inspired minds, the tortured genius who types all night long. I'm sure you've heard the story about the famous writer who just tossed off a novel in a weekend, right? I mean, we hear those all the time. We see the highlight reel version of success. What we don't see is the part where maybe those writers wrote 10 first drafts before they started on that story. We don't see the scenes that just collapsed halfway through. We don't see the sticky middle chapters full of notes to self like fix this garbage later. So when your writing feels awkward or clumsy, it feels like evidence that you're not meant for this. But here's what's actually true. Awkward writing is writing. It's part of the process. Bad writing is writing. Messy writing is writing. That's what this is about. We have to get good at being okay with the crap that we put on the page, the first draft, the second draft, the third draft. I go through multiple drafts before my stories are even close to ready for publication. We have to be able to manage the kind of grief and loss that comes with that very real truth. So why is this belief so hugely damaging to writers? We're going to hit that next. So even when we know this myth isn't true, most of us know that, something in us still panics when the words don't come easily, right? It's not just passing frustration. This belief that writing should be easy if you're doing it right gets under our skin somehow. It distorts how we see ourselves and how we measure our progress. And over time, it can do real damage because it can chip away at our confidence. It makes every awkward sentence feel like evidence that we're not good enough. And it turns a natural part of the process, writing badly, into a personal failure. And then it starts to spread because it keeps you from starting because you're afraid it won't come out well. And then it makes you second guess the work you've already done because it didn't feel effortless. And it convinces you that if the writing doesn't just flow, the idea probably isn't strong enough and neither are you. But the real danger is this. It disconnects you from your own creative rhythm. The part of you that's willing to try and to figure it out and shape the story over time. The part that knows how to keep going even when it's hard. And that's the part we have to protect as artists, because it's the part that finishes books. So if this belief that writing should be easy sticks around long enough, it starts to shape how you show up or don't show up to the page. It affects the choices you make and the meaning you assign to the struggle, because if you know writing is hard, you're going to know that you're doing it right if it's hard for you. But if you feel like writing should be easy, you're going to assign a different meaning to your own struggle. You're going to see it as evidence that you're not good enough. And the way you move or don't move through the draft is going to also be shaped by this belief. Let me show you what that looks like, because the difference is subtle, but it does change everything. So the writer who believes it should be easy, even if they're not really aware they believe that, even if you asked them, they would know that it's not supposed to be easy, but when they start to sit down, they expect that it should be easy for them. Okay, so let's assume we have this writer who thinks that it should flow easily. This writer is often going to start strong with a burst of inspiration and a fresh document and a few sentences they're proud of. But when that first wave of energy fades, they hesitate and they rewrite and they scroll and they pick and they fix and they assume something's wrong. And sometimes they close the laptop and tell themselves that they'll try again when they feel more inspired. And slowly the idea loses momentum. The writer who believes it should be easy is often the writer who doesn't finish their book. Sadly enough. The writer who knows that it's going to be hard is still going to wrestle with the same doubts, but they expect them. When the energy dips or the words feel clunky, they keep going. They lower the bar, stay with the draft, and trust that clarity will come later. They're not immune to this frustration by any means. They've just stopped mistaking it for failure. They know that this is just how it goes and that they've just got to keep going, that they've just got to hang in there. They know that writing a book is a slog. We all start out fresh and excited, but in the middle, it becomes a slog. It's like trying to wade through the jungle. It's just hard, and you just have to keep going. The writer who believes it should be easy starts with the same energy, but when the momentum dips, and it always does, they freeze. Instead of expecting friction, they assume that something's wrong. And they don't just question the draft that they're working on, which is bad enough, they start questioning themselves. The writer who knows is supposed to be hard still hits those same moments of friction, but they recognize them. They expect that resistance. They don't expect it to flow easily. So when the draft feels clumsy or flat, they just keep going. And somehow by the end of the session, they have made progress. If you've been stuck in any of those patterns, the false starts, the stalled drafts, the slow fade of energy, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. But it probably does mean that something needs to shift in your head. That belief about how writing is supposed to feel can quietly steer your entire process. Even when you understand that this belief is false and damaging, it still tends to show up. And without something to interrupt that pattern, it's easy to slip right back into it. So how do you begin to shift it? Not just intellectually, but in the actual moment when it throws you off, which is usually when you're writing. Here's something simple you can try. So knowing the myth is false isn't always enough. I mean, you can understand that writing isn't supposed to feel easy and still find yourself freezing when it doesn't flow. That old belief is sticky. It shows up fast and it feels convincing in the moment. So instead of trying to erase it completely, try interrupting it. The next time you hear that voice, the one that says, this shouldn't be this hard, pause just long enough to name what's actually happening. Try saying this to yourself. This feels hard because I'm doing something that matters. Or this feels slow because I'm building something from scratch. Or this feels awkward because I'm at the beginning. And beginnings are allowed to be awkward. Or my favorite, this is hard because writing is hard. I mean, that's just the truth. Even one sentence like that can shift the emotional weight you're feeling. So you're not trying to make it easy, because it's not going to be. You're just reminding yourself that hard is not the enemy, and it is not a verdict on your talent. If you practice that often enough, that reset in the moment, then the grip of this lie starts to loosen a little bit. This kind of shift, though, takes practice. It's not something you believe once and then never struggle with again. In fact, I still have to remind myself of this. But each time you interrupt the old pattern, even briefly, you make much more space for a different way to write. And that brings up the next step. If you've been waiting for clarity or ease or the right words before you let yourself begin, it might be time to start differently. Let me show you what that can look like. Most writers stop writing because they expect brilliance too early. So here's the shift. Write what I call a threshold draft. This isn't your first draft. It's what comes before your first draft. Mind blown, right? I'd never thought of this before like a while ago, but it can be really helpful. So a threshold draft isn't about getting it right. It's about crossing the resistance and getting into the story. I mean, you may have heard that the first draft is a writer telling themselves the story. This is definitely true for me. The first draft is me figuring out what this story is or wants to be. If you call it a threshold draft instead of a first draft, it may help you to get into that mindset a little bit more easily. Because I think a lot of us still with the first draft want that first draft to be it. We want that to be our story, and then we'll just, polish it up a little bit. But unfortunately, that often doesn't work very well. The first draft is often messy enough that if you don't have your mind right about it, then you can feel discouraged about whether or not you can make this story publishable. So if you call this first one a threshold draft, you can shift your mindset a little bit. This isn't your first draft. This is you learning what the story is. This is you telling yourself the story. This is the framework of the story. So you're not writing this draft to keep it. You're writing to move past the stuckness or to figure out what it is. So here's how you get started on this. First of all, you call it a threshold draft. Then you set a timer for 15 minutes, wherever you are in the story. So this could be when you're starting a new story, or it could be when you're starting a new scene or new chapter or what have you. Whatever it is, you set the timer for 15 minutes and you tell yourself you're going to write. No formatting, no editing, no spell check, no fixing, no none of that. You're just going to write, and you start with this sentence. This scene is about blank, and then let yourself just write on that. Or if you have a couple of characters who are talking to each other in this one, then you say, character A, whoever's appearing on the scene first, is going to talk about blank, and then you have them talk about that. If you have an action scene coming up, then you can adjust this for the action scene. The point is that you're not worrying about connecting anything at this moment. You're just trying to get into this. Write like you're whispering this story to yourself in a dark room. And trust me, this isn't wasted time. This is how you enter the scene without needing it to be perfect or great or anything. You're building the emotional bridge between the idea in your head and the draft on the page. It's just a way to get started. And oftentimes that's what we need the most. A way to get started. So crossing the threshold gets you into the book, but staying in motion is what gets you through it. So here's how to keep writing, even when your energy dips or your flow disappears or the middle of the book feels like quicksand. Try this. Remember that you don't have to fix everything right now. A lot of writers get into trouble trying to fix every problem as it shows up. A plot hole appears, or a name doesn't feel right, or a scene falls flat, and suddenly it feels like the whole book is broken. But you are allowed to hold things lightly as you go through, especially a threshold draft. You don't have to nail it on the first try. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Think of it as building a relationship with the story. And like any relationship, some parts won't make sense until later. Letting some things remain unfinished is a skill. It keeps you writing long enough to see where the real clarity shows up. Step number 2. Most writers stall out because they try to write what they think they should be writing instead of what they're actually ready to write. For example, the pressure to start at the beginning or follow the outline can crush your momentum in the moment, especially when you're already carrying some doubt with you. So try this instead. You don't have to earn your way to the fun part. You don't have to write chronologically if you don't want to. You can start with a scene that's tugging at you right now, or the voice of the character that showed up when you were in the shower, or the one moment that feels oddly alive, even if the rest is fuzzy to you right now. That one moment is enough to keep you moving, so you have permission to follow the thread. And step number 3, we've been conditioned to believe that progress has to be visible and measurable, and something that you can print out and point to and say, this is good. But writing doesn't always work that way. In fact, it often doesn't. Some of your most important progress happens on the days when the words are awkward, or the structure is shaky, and you're not even sure that you like any of it. I like to equate writing a draft of a story to building a house. If you've ever gone through having a house built, I did when I think I was in 4th grade, when my parents built a house on the ranch that we had while I was growing up. And it was just a mess from start to finish. We were still living in our old house in the suburbs, and it seemed like everything that could go wrong went wrong. So some parts would get built, but then they'd find out that the wiring was off. Or another room would get built and they'd find out that the pipes were wrong. It was always this, go back and fix, go back and fix. And we'd go out to visit the place. And I remember sitting in the, what was going to be the living room, having some of those little carnation instant breakfasts that my mom used to fix for us. And there's just mess all around us, I mean, there's pieces of wood and there's nails and there's, dust everywhere. And the contractors are walking around. I mean, it's all like a disaster. It's good to think of your threshold draft or your first draft like that, like building that house. You can go in and just work on the bathroom if you want to, even if the whole rest of the house isn't done yet. You can just work on the bathroom if that's the part you really want to work on that day. Or you can just work on the electrical if you're not into, putting up boards that day. Think of the story that way. Do whatever it takes to keep your momentum going on it so that you just keep moving forward. When you do that, you kind of rewire your relationship to the work because it teaches you how to keep going even without any external validation. And that helps you trust that simply showing up is still progress, even if the result isn't perfect. The more you learn to honor momentum over mastery, the easier it gets to write through the resistance instead of being stopped by it. So your mission of the week, if you choose to accept it. Before your next writing session, take 30 seconds to name one thing that you expect to feel hard. So it might be just getting started, or it might be finishing the last scene, or it might be staying with the discomfort instead of trying to edit your way out of it. Whatever it is, say it and claim it, and then speak it out loud before you actually start writing. Say something like, of course this part's hard, that's normal. It's the way writing is. I just need to stay with it and keep moving. So you're not trying to erase resistance here. You're just refusing to be surprised by it. Naming the hard part ahead of time gives you a steadier place to stand when the difficulty shows up. So if this helped you shift something today, go ahead and like the video and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss what's next. And if you're trying to get through a first draft but keep running into that stuck, tangled, not good enough feeling, that's exactly why I wrote Escape the Writer's Web. In that book, you'll identify your unique procrastination pattern and get personalized tools that actually match how your brain works. You can find the link below to that if you want to check it out. And I'd love to hear what part of the process you're working through right now. Drop a comment and let me know what's showing up in your draft. And if you want more support as you move through this phase of your writing life, check out the next video on the end screen for more help. I wish you good luck on your writing this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.